Hiya, and welcome back to Lyre, the game that teaches us that Eren Jaeger might have a persona. I cannot be the only one that gets Eren Jaeger vibes from, I think his name is Adrius. Is his name Adrius? Yeah, I think his name is Adrius. I have not tested the save file, and I think it might break. It doesn't feel like I got as much sleep as I'd hoped. As I slowly wake up, I slide my legs off the gritty stone bench. The cold floor of the cell sends a shock through my body, but I'm too exhausted to jolt up from my relaxed position. One would think that I would be used to this by now, but I don't think I'll ever get used to it. Did we already read through this? I can't remember. Because I know we made it to the thing. Let me go to the chapter select. I'm just going to click chapter 10. We're just going to use Chapter 10, day 28. Yeah, because we made it to the thing. Part 1, Lyre. Where the hell did we leave off? Seriously, where the hell did we leave off? Winter's harsh retribution on summer grows more relentless with each passing day. Flakes of snow gently fall down from the sky above, landing on Lyle's dark brown fur. The ground beneath his feet is frigid, but after being outside all morning, he's gotten used to it. Most of the people in these parts are used to it. Even the plants are barely affected by the frozen shower flurry. He weakly kicks a small pile of snow, watching it toss up onto the air before landing on the ground ahead of him. I'm gonna check real quick, because I do not know if we're in the right place. Just gonna click a couple hundred times. Because if I see the monkey, then we already went through all this. Hang on. Yeah, we already went through all that. So we just need to go here. Yeah, ugh. Taking these walks helps him think, and being out here is better than being in the castle. For the past few days, he's been trying to do everything that he can to help Richter. He hasn't been very successful, though. The only contact that he's been able to make with him is through a couple small letters, and he's not allowed to write anything important on them. Nothing helpful, at the least. So they usually just end up being notes with words of encouragement or promises. Wouldn't matter anyway, given the fact that Richter can't send anything back. Lyle stopped sending them after a while anyway. The fact they need to be read by others is a breach of his privacy he'd rather not go through. As he slowly walks down the path, his eyes drift in the direction of the small pond underneath the dragon apricot tree. It was only a few weeks ago when he and Richter were sitting under that tree. The memory of that day always brings a smile to his face. He'd never been able to be so open with someone like that before, without it blowing up in his face at least. He was scared, but no matter how nervous he was, he felt comfortable. It was such a happy moment. Now it leaves a bittersweet taste in his mouth. Lyle's paws brush against the stiff grass underneath the snow as he walks toward the pond. The idea of showing this to Richter fills him with a little bit of joy. Winter in Lyre is nothing like winter in Eren from what he's heard. In Eren, it rarely snows, and if it does, most of the plants, such as flowers and things like that, need to be kept warm or they'll die. But here in Lyre, all of the plants have adapted to the climate. Sure, they lose a bit of their color and become stiff, but other than that, they're usually fine. It really creates a beautiful winter. Lyle stops by the tree stump at the edge of the pond and sits down, moving his cape so that he doesn't tug on it while sitting. His tail brushes against the snow and it sends a chill throughout his body, but it's a chill that feels nice. His trousers are thick enough that his rear isn't immediately shocked by the cold surface of the stump. Even then, his fur does an excellent job at keeping him from being too cold. Once he's relaxed, he leans forward with his paws clasped together in his lap, looking down at the water's frozen surface. He reminisces on that bittersweet memory once more, thinking about when Richter broke when Richter picked pieces off of the rest of his apricot and tossed them into the pond. Small fish would swim up and swarm the pieces, pushing them around the water's surface, creating ripples across the whole pond. Richter was being very quiet. Lyre had already finished all of his fruit, so he sat there watching Richter, wondering if the prior conversation really went as well as he thought it did. Now the small body of water is completely frozen. Lyre picks up one of the apricots and examines it. It's rock solid and covered in frost. He takes off one of his gloves and holds the pink fruit in his paw. The cold skin brushes up against his paw pads and sends a shiver up his arm. He then looks down at the palm of his paw and stares at it with a melancholy look. The pads on his paw are dark and rough, with large claws coming out from the tips of his fingers. The rest is covered in fur. Compared to the soft skin and long, articulate fingers on Richter's hand, they're much different. He chuckles to himself. No matter what he thinks about, his thoughts always lead back to Richter. It can't be helped. Whether he's thinking about how awful their situation is, or how much he cares for him, Richter's always on his mind. He looks down at his paw again. A human and a wolf. Even in Eren, something like that must be rare. But in Lyre? Lyre can't think of any time he's heard of something like that happening. Similar things have happened before, but usually there's at least something akin between the two partners. Lyre loves him very much, but even he has to admit there's a bit of a gap between the two of them biologically. Before he can continue to delve deeper into his thoughts, his ears perk up as he hears boots crunching through the snow. He lifts his head and turns in the direction of the noise. Elizabeth approaches him from the path just outside the entrance into the castle. She stares at him for a moment before continuing toward the pond. Her footwear crunch through the snow with a deep, gritty noise. She's in her usual robes and doesn't look too cold, aside from the pale skin on her face turning red at the nose and cheeks. The only thing different about her is a pair of wool mittens. It's surprising that she even has the time to come out here. The investigation is still going on, and she rarely gets a moment to get away from it all. Lyle, on the other hand, isn't allowed near the investigation as much as he'd like. The only reason he's even able to be part of it is because he's a high-ranking individual and technically a witness. Not only that, but despite the restrictions Adrius has put on him, Lyle's power over the Royal Guard is still as strong as ever. When it comes to anything other than Richter, of course. So despite Adrius and his wishes, Lyle needs to be there to lead the Royal Guard in their inspection. Liz steps off the small path and approaches the pond. I thought you might be out here. Her voice travels across the pond like a hawk taking a sharp dive. Were you looking for me? Even when walking through a small layer of snow, her figure is as straight and balanced as it always is. Once she gets closer, Lyle can't help but chuckle in his head at the reality that only when he's sitting down are they at eye level. No, I just assumed I would come across you. It's not often that I come out here to think, especially with the weather. But I do stroll through here sometimes. She looks down at the stump he's sitting on and smirks. But I see my thinking spot has already been taken. Lyle blushes slightly and jumps up from his seat. By all means, here. It was only a joke. No, I insist. You've been working hard lately. You should be resting. Not out here in the cold. She stands there for a moment, looking up at him with a smile that spoke plenty of words before sitting down. Sometimes you are too kind. Well, as long as nobody mistakes it for weakness. Of course. Lyle walks over to the tree and stands by the trunk, leaning his back against the cold surface. Liz sits there quietly for only a moment. Hiya, most likely gathering her thoughts before speaking again. Lyle? Yes? I know it's not like we haven't seen each other in a while, but I just now realized that I've never properly asked. How have you been taking all of this? He scuffs his paw at the ground, looking down and avoiding her eye contact. I've been taking it as well as I can, I suppose. He brings back his paw and kicks one of the fruit, watching it stake across the surface of the pond before slowly coming to a stop near the bank on the other side. I know Raynar was like family to you, and I can certainly confirm without a doubt that he adored you. For some reason, Lyle can't help but think about the depressing funeral that was held only a couple days after Raynar's murder. It was a private gathering that only those closest to him were allowed to attend. The burial was held at twilight in the gardens where Elena was also laid to rest. It was a sad day and not a single person spoke. Instead, everyone just stood there quietly mourning. Adrius said a few words, but other than that, he just silently sat in front of the grave, gently placing small flowers around both headstones. Lyre wanted to stay, but when everyone started to depart and Adrius made no move to get up, Lyre knew that he too should probably go. I wish none of this happened. I know. We all do. This whole tragedy might just plunge this kingdom into war. Lyre shivers at the thought of war breaking out. I'm sure that another solution will present itself. She continues to look at the ground, her eyes shrouded in gloom. Both of them sit there in silence for some time before she speaks up. I spoke with Lord Richter the other day. I couldn't remember if I had told you or not. Lyre straightens up after hearing this. No, you didn't. How's he doing? Not as bad as one would think, but still, he's not doing too great. Just then, Lyle's chest feels like it twists into a knot. He leans against the tree, sliding down the trunk and slumping against it, seating himself onto the cold snow beneath him. Nothing comes to mind that he could say, his thoughts completely clouded. Elizabeth's concerned voice breaks him out of his daze. Are you okay? I'm sorry if that bothered you. Even in the midst of his swirling thoughts, Lyre musters up the energy to give a polite response. No, it's fine. You were only answering my hasty questions. She relaxes a bit and places her hands on her lap. I know you have a strong devotion to him, but the rumors don't do it justice. They're a bit of an understatement, actually. Oh yeah, the rumors. Just a bunch of fools who talk about it as if there's nothing better to do. Everyone talks about it, as you probably know. I know firsthand. I wish people just mind their own damn business. Trust me, so do I. It would make everything a lot easier. I just want you to know that I'm not judging you. I know. I was ever shocked with that display during the party. Lyre slumps more into the tree, his face being surrounded by the fluff around his neck. Yeah. Don't get the wrong idea. It's not in the way you think. After the initial shock, I was actually quite interested. Really? Yes. The amount of courage it must have taken for all of that. Trust me, it wasn't as courageous as you think. Still, it was impressive. Especially Richter's part in it. The way he told off all of those pompous halfwits from the higher houses. God! The looks on their faces were priceless. They really hated that. Yeah, it was great. The interesting part about it was Richter's reaction. No normal person in his position would dare to do something like that. Compared to that day he stumbled into the chambers without his thoughts scattered and manners thrown out the window, I'd say it was an improvement. But still, he's so different from every other ambassador I've come across. Like that one from Driss. He's strange, but there's no doubt he was politically trained. Unlike Richter, who... Are you saying Richter isn't good at his job? No, not at all. I like that fact that he's so different from the others. Besides, I haven't known him long enough to be able to make such a judgment. Let me, adjust my microphone a bit so we can... Back. Lyre looks down, embarrassed at his rushed attempt at defending Richter. Sorry, I misunderstood. He hasn't had the chance to do much yet, but everything that he's done so far has been done exceptionally. Mostly dealing with the crown's money. Making sure Raynar didn't run the kingdom dry with another one of his extravagant parties. Someone had to. She looks down with a smile on her face, but it quickly fades once the levity of the conversation dissipates. I've gotten off track, though. I know that you're a good man. When you were a young lad, you always strove to do what's right, even if it wasn't in your best interest. But, she lets out a sigh, but sometimes I think you're in over your head. There it is. Lyre lets out a short exhale through his nose, causing a puff of cold breath to appear in front of it. I want to trust you on this, really, I do. But there's not much for me to go off of, other than your word. Lyre seems to sink further into his armor. It's as if he'll disappear into himself at any given moment. Do you have any evidence that can help clear his name? Anything to bring to the trial? Of course, but I don't think it will be enough. Anything you haven't told us yet that could be useful? Everything I know has been laid out for all to hear, along with all of the evidence everyone's been looking at for the past week. It's almost as if they're trying to make it seem like they haven't already made their decision. She places her hands on her lap, looking down at them with a thoughtful face. I know you have these feelings for him, and I'm happy for you, but you're risking a lot right now. More than you could possibly imagine. She brushes the snow off of her legs and stands up, looking him in the eye. He looks up at her and sits up straight, realizing she's leaving. You're going to find yourself at a crossroads soon. We all are. The question is, will you risk it all, or will you abandon everything? Lyle clumsily stands up with a confused look on his face. What? It's just something to think about. Something I've been thinking about for a long time. Not the warmest note to end on, but I assure you, giving it some thought will prove useful. She brings her hands behind her back and gives a nod. It's about time I went back inside in the warm walls of the castle. Of course. Listen, Lyle. His ears perk up as she continues. I've put my trust in you, but whatever happens, I want you to know. I just want what's best for this kingdom, and I'm sorry for anything that happens. Lyle's attempt at coming up with any response to what she said slowly dissipates as she walks away towards the entrance to the courtyard. One of the castle guards comes out the door, safely ushering her into the hall. Lyle looks up into the air, snowflakes falling down gracefully like stars against a foggy blue sky. What she said doesn't feel so reassuring, though. If anything, it just makes the rest of this week feel like it's going by faster. Everything seems to be slowly creeping up on them with every passing day. This feeling of dread would be enough to make anyone crumble. That on top of the constant thought of Richter sitting alone in that cell, slowly losing all hope. Lyle looks down at his paw, the glove still firmly grasped in it. Little claws at each fingertip jingle and clank into each other as he grips it tighter. I swear I'll... He releases his grip, sliding the glove back onto his paw. I'll get you out of there, no matter what. I'll prove it to them. He says this while looking at the ground, as if he were talking in the direction of Richter down in their cell. There is one thing that he could do, though, but he needs to go to the court chambers and look over the evidence. A certain someone might be able to help him identify something. This might be his only chance to get information that nobody else could. He quickly stands up and begins to walk away from the pond. He's done enough thinking. It's time to take action. With each twist and turn through the castle halls, Lyle's heart beats faster, his body filled with anxiousness and hope. Contrary to his large size, his feet are silent and quick as he swiftly makes his way down the corridor. The court chambers are just up ahead. The room is heavily guarded, along with Richter's quarters and Raynar's bedchambers. Nobody except for people participating in the investigation have been allowed in Richter's room since the solstice. They did a complete search of the room, finding nothing but expensive clothes and a cluttered desk full of notes and documents, along with a few embarrassing drawings Lyle had made that he kept. Thankfully, the guards won't stop him. He may not be able to visit with Richter, but they can't bar him off from this. As he approaches the door, there's a few castle guards standing outside. They stand up straight and look forward. Lyle walks up to the door and takes out his keys, unlocking it with a large clanking sound. He opens the door and leans in through the threshold. It's empty? The candles on the chandelier above the table are lit, but the curtains are drawn and the room is lifeless. The room shouldn't be this empty. He pauses for a moment, wondering if something is wrong, but then walks into the room with caution, closing the door behind him. The table went from being a place for guests to eat, to being cluttered with papers, documents, and all sorts of evidence important to the investigation. The chairs are pushed out and facing in all kinds of directions. Raynar's clothes from that night are laying flat on the table, completely spread out, appearing to have been examined multiple times. The dried blood on the suit sends a cold rush up Lyle's body, but he looks away from it for now. That's not what he came here for. Along with the suit are pieces of the ripped drapes which have been collected and laid out next to it. Letters, documents, more letters. The table would look like an absolute mess to anyone who didn't know their way around it. Lyle spots the thing he's looking for, but not before his eyes glance across some of the sketches he made. Liz knew of Lyle's hobby and asked him to sketch out the scene before they removed any of the evidence. It was early in the morning and none of them had slept, so his drawings didn't come out that great. On top of the fact that he wasn't enjoying a single moment of it. The things he was asked to sketch out that night were uncomfortable, but it had to be done and it helps, so... Thankfully, whoever was looking at them decided to cover them up with a sketch of the scene from the entrance. Not pleasant, but much less detailed. A shocking sight he'd rather not remember. With a nasty twist forming in his stomach, he sets the sketches back on the table and looks down at the murder weapon. It's a unique, yet simple, rondel dagger with a long blade. It's nothing too classy, but certainly not cheap. I don't know if we're doing Ace Attorney. It's not Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney. It is Lyle Wolfman A+ lawyer. Haha. A pretty thing for a peasant to spend their life savings on, but nothing a noble would use. The guard is made from gold, but it feels very light. The dagger doesn't look like it's been used much either. It has a clean finish aside from the blood that's been left on it. There's no signs of scratches or dents though. Everything about it seems flawless. The fact that there's no mark signifying the maker is annoying. However, there's one thing that's odd about this dagger that's always bothered Lyre. These blades were typically used along with the thrusting swords such as rapier or an estoc. Lyle of Lyre, head detective. A secondary weapon used to gain an edge on your opponent. Your typical dagger would be much better for assassinating someone. This dagger would still get the job done though. The blade is sharp enough to cut a hair straight down to the center and the tip is very pointed. Just looking at it is enough to make Lyre nervous, but holding it sends an ominous chill up his back and around his shoulders. The castle blacksmith has already had a look at it, and he said it's a standard northern dagger that you could get from any smith in Eren or Lyre. Lyre doesn't trust his judgment though. The man used to be very involved in smithing and knew a lot about the different types of blades and forges they came from. But he hasn't been in the field lately. Now he just forges weapons and armor specifically for the castle guard along with the royal guard. Here's my dog. Look at him go. Ah. Ah. Wise beyond his years, but rusty in his knowledge. Lyre knows of one man who might know the origin of this blade. Eden. If Eden can figure out where the blade might have come from and bring it before the court, it could turn the tides of the trial entirely. Eden can confirm that Richter didn't buy a single weapon when he was in this forge. It's not solid proof, but it's something. Lyre takes the blade and gently puts it into a small satchel. Let's hope you can figure this out, Eden. As he makes his way to the door, it opens wide and fast, the door clunking into the wall behind it. Hi, bitch! Coincidentally, Bjorn stands in the doorway, his large body taking up most of the frame. He has an annoyed grimace plastered on his muzzle. Reed. Oh, that's his name! Lyre Reed! He looks around the room with a confused look on his face. Who are you just talking to? Lyre tucks the satchel more behind his back and underneath his cape as he backs up a bit. Nobody. I was just thinking out loud. Bjorn knowing about what Lyre plans to do would certainly cause some trouble. Trouble he'd rather not have to deal with. Having to explain to someone like Adrius that he wants to take the murder weapon is as undesirable as a confrontation with the killer themselves. What? Were you looking over evidence or something? Bjorn glances at the table with disinterest. Yeah, just looking. Trying to piece everything together. All by yourself? The old bear stands up straight, his towering figure rising up above Lyle's by a good distance. Yes. Is there something wrong with that? The tone of annoyance in Lyle's voice slips out on the last few words. You're allowed to do that? Of course I am. Don't forget, as captain of the Royal Guard, I still have partial supervision over this investigation and the trial. Bjorn grunts and lets out a chuckle, his frown still sitting upon his lips. It doesn't matter. I was just leaving. Lyre goes to step around him, but he speaks up. You shouldn't have it. Lyre stops in his tracks, his heartbeat rising slightly. What? You shouldn't have supervision over this. Everyone knows it. Everyone's thinking about it. Even you should understand that it's wrong. Lyle's shocked face is nothing compared to the sight of his hackles rising. That's not for you to decide. And it's not wrong in the slightest. Someone has to support the innocent man locked in that cell. Lyre continues to walk past him and grabs the doorknob. I won't stand for this disrespect, Sir Bjorn. I'm leaving. Lyre doesn't wait for Bjorn to retort as the door closes behind him. The guards outside the door are still as statues, and Lyre walks in the opposite direction, down the stairs. And I'm going to turn the music up a bit, just turn it up slightly. Bjorn's constant disrespect of Lyre is annoying, but as long as he does what he's told and doesn't get in his way, he could honestly care less. It's weird being a young captain to an old beast like that. That's just the way things are. Age isn't a large factor in the capabilities to lead. Maybe he'll realize that someday. Lyre steps off the bottom of the stairs and reaches the door to the passage which leads to the village. He looks around before opening the door. From what he can tell, nobody was following him. He takes out his keys, unlocking the door swiftly and swinging it open. Cold air blows out from the doorway into his face. He steps down the spiral staircase, closing the door behind him and locking it. The stairs are wet with cold water and makes him wish he had a pair of those shoes Richter has to wear. He probably wouldn't fit on his feet, though. Descending down the stairs, he reaches the bottom and begins to carefully make his way through the tunnel. Each step he takes becomes colder and colder, some of the puddles beneath him reacting to the movement, glowing bright blue like they always do. Once he reaches the trap door at the end, he unlocks it and pushes it up as far as his arms let him. He lifts himself up the stairs and tries to let his eyes adjust to the light. It's snowing out right now, but each snowflake quickly melts before it can even touch the ground. Other than a thin layer of snow here and there, the Vitality Fire Lanterns seem to be doing their job as always. He steps out of the small alley and into the village square. It's not as busy as it usually is, but people are still going about their day. For an obvious reason, everything feels more depressing now. It may just be his mood, though. There's a few people walking around and shopping for stuff. A couple of kids are playing by the fountain, one of them flipping a few coins into the water. John's outside the bakery adding logs to the stove. Always a good, hard-working lad. The logs look like small branches when he grabs them. Lyle's ears perk up at the familiar sound of metal striking an anvil from within Eden's forge. Eden must have been working since dawn, because from the sound of it, every contraption and furnace in his forge is running. He secures the satchel at his side and lifts the tarp in the doorway, his ears brushing at it as he ducks through the arch. The entire forge is suffocated in dry, hot air. Eden is bent over, poking at the inside of the furnace, his body shining with sweat. His apron is completely dirty, and all sorts of tools are thrown about to the ground. He stands up and turns around, jumping a bit at the sight of Lyle. Lyle? Quiet as always, I see. Lyle rubs the back of his head while looking at the ground. I'm not trying to be. Yeah, sure. Holler my name next time. He sets down a fire poker and turns back around, wiping his paws with a rag. How have you been? A mess. Yeah, I bet. A long pause floats up through the air, but before Lyle can get to the point, Eden speaks up again. Such an awful thing to happen. I can only imagine how it's been affecting you. As much of a shock as it was, life still goes on for us folk outside the castle. Though I can't help but feel a little depressed lately. He bites his lip while looking at his anvil. The top of it's scratched and busted all over. I also heard about who they say did it. The human fella you've been following around. What was his name again? Richter. Trust me, he didn't do it. Eden shrugs his shoulders. I hope he didn't. He seemed nice. But enough about that. What can I do for you? Don't tell me winter's dull again. You can't have done that much training. No, it's not that. I wanted to ask you a few questions. About what? Lyle pulls a satchel around to his front and lifts the flap, revealing the handle of the blade. He carefully pulls it out and places it on top of the anvil. I need you to tell me everything you can about this blade. Eden cocks an eyebrow at the dagger and rubs his chin. I thought you didn't like fancy daggers, big guy. What exactly did you want to know about it? Where's it from? What's it made of? Do you recognize the maker? Anything that could help me clear Richter's name. Eden picks up the knife gently and examines it. Is this the blade that... It is. A slight grimace appears on his face. Turning it around in his paws, he studies it with extra care, trying to look at every detail. What about the castle blacksmith? Didn't he have anything to say about this? Yeah, but I don't even know why they consulted him in the first place. He only works on special orders, and he's been out of the trade for decades. Lyle wrings his paws, looking at Eden with concern. On this matter, I trust your judgment more than anyone's. Eden holds the dagger close to the light from the furnace and runs a claw across the guard. He then rubs one of his paws along the pommel. What did the old man say? Said it was a regular blade. Could be purchased from any smith in Eren or Lyre. He's wrong. It's a very easy mistake to make, though. Lyle leans forward, placing his paws on the anvil and resting his weight on it. I knew it! To anyone else, this would look like a simple raw little dagger. A rapier's best friend. He points to the sharp tip and holds it in a straightened grip. That's the case with this one. But it's not that simple of a blade. Although thrust-in swords became a widely used weapon in northern Eren, they were created in Lyre. Both kingdoms had many knights and soldiers trained in the art of dueling with such blades. The thing is, ever since trade between the three kingdoms was expertly established, so were ideas. He places the blade back onto the anvil. The fires of the forge cast a warm glow upon the blade. Ideas were shared and techniques learned. Eventually, all sorts of weapons were being forged all around Tigran. Weapons considered to be foreign were rare and sought after in their homelands, and a dagger like this was definitely forged in Driss. He nudges the blade across the anvil in Lyle's direction as he says this. Really? I've seen ones like it before on the few trips I've taken to Driss. The wavy blade is something you could go off of, but here's the main reason. He points to the garden pommel. This isn't gold. It's not? That there is pure Erenemite. I definitely mispronounced that. Let's see how it's pronounced.
Self-voicing enabled. Eden, that there is pure Erenemite.
Erenemite. It's a somewhat rare metal that's similar to gold in quality. It's almost as rare as Vecrite, and it's found primarily in the south. Weighs less and it's stronger. He picks it up and holds it out to Lyle. This blade is from Driss. Kadaj. Sorry, what? Nothing. Lyle takes the blade from him and gently places it back in his satchel. Thank you for your help, Eden. It's no problem at all. I don't even charge you for my time. Haha, very funny. I'll be seeing you. Hopefully. Lyle turns to leave, but Eden stops him. Hey, Lyle? Yes? I heard other things about that Richter fella. Lyle turns around and leans against the wall behind him. Eden. I heard that you're at it again. That's my business. I know, just... It seems like it's happening all over again. Everyone's forming mean opinions about it. Lyle looks up at the ceiling and sighs. Listen to me for a moment, will ya? I know that they made it difficult for us to be together. I know that they spread horrible rumors which were quickly silenced and not forgotten, but... Lyle starts to feel hot in the face and he slumps into himself. I saw the way he looks at you. His eyes held the truth. Lyle's blush becomes more and more visible as he continues. Promise me something. What? Don't let them do it again. Lyle stands up straight and looks him in the eyes. I won't, Eden. Good. And if there's anything else I can do to help, let me know. I'm still your friend, no matter how much you distance yourself from everyone. Lyle walks over to the doorway and Eden lifts the tarp to the side. He rubs the back of his head and looks up at Eden with a concerned and embarrassed gaze. Thank you, Eden. I'm sorry. No worries. They step outside into the chilly air and Eden basks in it, trying to cool off. This visit was very productive. A bit too productive in some areas. I'm honestly glad I was able to help. Hopefully everything gets resolved. Only one can hope at this point. One can only hope at this point. I should really stop being a stranger, though. I'll come visit you again soon if things go well. Lyle takes a few steps toward the alley while looking at Eden. Before he can go any further, he crashes into something which causes him to stumble back slightly. Hi, bitch! Watch your step, Captain. As Lyle regains his footing, he notices that Bjorn has slipped the satchel off his person and is now opening the flap. When he looks back up, what little subtlety he had in his eyes is now completely gone. I knew it. Sneaking off with pieces of evidence as if you own the bloody investigation. Also, hiya. Lyle reaches forward, taking the satchel from Bjorn, who basically lets him have it. I was not sneaking. What are you doing lurking in the alley behind my forge? Following this reckless fool. Bjorn gestures to Lyle with his large paw, not taking his eyes off of him for a moment. Lyle's face becomes flushed, and he grips the satchel at his side. You're coming with me. Lyle goes to walk past him. We'll speak about this later. Before he can finish his sentence, Bjorn grabs him by the shoulders and slams him up against the wall. His head hits the wall behind him, and before he can recover, there's another painful blow to his face. Excuse me? He's then shoved back toward the end of the alley, stumbling slightly. Lyle, stay out of this, Eden. Bjorn had punched him directly in the nose, his fist splattered with blood. Lyle could already taste it in his mouth, the potent metallic flavor running across his tongue. Yeah, and hiya. You bastard! Have you lost your mind? I could ask the same of you, boy. I think you're completely absolved of all punishment. You think you're completely absolved of all punishment just because you're the captain. It makes me sick. Bjorn already has his paw firmly placed on the grip of his sword. Lyle feels a rage grow inside of him that he hadn't felt in a long time. He slowly raises his arm up behind him and grips the handle of his own blade. You would draw steel on me? You've been meddling with his investigation for far too long. You let your emotions get in the way of every decision you make, and it's going to bring this entire trial into chaos. That's absurd. If anything, that's what I'm trying to prevent, you brute. It's true, Uncle. Shut your trap. See, this is why they make tools. This is why they... Oh, no, Richter is the MC's name. We're just seeing this from the love interest perspective. But as I was saying, they make tools for this exact thing. For this exact situation. They make tools. Oh shit, that's the wrong one. Shit, I don't have it anymore. See. They make tools for this exact situation. It's all over America. It's all over the media in America, and you can buy it in Walmart. It's called a gun. Eden looks like he's about to say something, but stops himself. He looks over at Lyre, a worried look filling his eyes. What do you plan to do? Bjorn taps his chin lightly while glaring at Lyre. Teaching you a lesson might be good. You've been a bad dog. A Walmart gat would be crazy. Right? Honestly, I think it'd be best if I just killed the Iranian bastard. Then you can go back to thinking with your brain instead of that thing between your legs. Like a good captain. Hearing him say this triggers something within Lyre that he's only felt on a few occasions. A hunting rifle. I think I can do a pretty good southern accent. A hunting rifle. Yeah. The purest kind of rage. His body feels like a fire was lit inside of it, flowing through his veins and boiling his blood. No, because if this man keeps going, it's not going to be rage filling my bloods. It is going to be red, white, and blue. It is going to be the American flag filling my veins. Character with gun in a fictional setting. Guns are far too spread here. Yeah. Just red, white, and blue is going to be filling my veins, and an assault rifle will be filling my hand. His body feels like a fire was lit inside of it, flowing through his veins and boiling his blood. He was only trying to... Bjorn whirls around and yells at Eden. Stay out of this, boy! Wait, were you already here? I don't think... Hiya! Lyre casually walking on with Beretta. I've already warned you once. Lyre takes his chance to draw his sword, the blade sliding out of the leather sheath with ease. He dashes back while doing this to put some distance between him and Bjorn. Yo, the music fucking slaps. Once his footing is secured, he lowers the sword in front of his body and assumes a plow guard. If there's going to be a fight, he's going to defend himself. And since it's Bjorn, there's going to be a fight. Bjorn has already turned his gaze back to Lyre and smirks a sinister grin. Looks like you're the one drawing steel. I'll go get help! Eden runs off in the direction of the castle. I got a Glock in my Rari. You plan to hurt me with that pretty thing? I only mean to defend myself. Bjorn reaches behind his shoulder and draws the heavy sword off of his back. The blade glistens in the light and is twice the size of Lyle's own sword. You're coming with me, one way or another. I'd like to see that happen. You won't be dealing out your own sick idea of justice this time. Got a Glock in my rar, E. Bjorn rushes forward, sword raised and ready to be brought down upon him. Lyre steadies himself and prepares for the hit. Bye, bitch. Bjorn brings a heavy hunk of metal down upon Lyle's own blade, but he swiftly parries it and dodges to the side. The blade slams into the ground with a mighty clank, sparking against the bricks. Lyle's Vecrite sword rings throughout the air as he swings it back around, away from Bjorn. You know, you've never commanded respect. You weren't fit to be captain. Lyle points his blade in Bjorn's direction, defending himself against the next blow. 17 shots. No, 38. I never wanted your respect. I never needed it. I demand your loyalty. The same loyalty we all show this kingdom. Bjorn scoffs at him, pacing around the wolf with a calm yet savage look in his eyes. Loyalty. What good has it done you? You've been a slave to loyalty your whole life. A small crowd has started to form just outside of the alley. Period. Nobody dares to get closer, though. Bjorn takes this chance to swing at Lyle again. This time, Lyle brings a sword in front of him, grabbing the end of it with his gloved paw and bracing it against the flat of his blade. Bjorn's sword clashed against Lyle's, sending sparks all over the ladder, throwing him slightly off balance before sending his weight back onto the blade, and throwing Bjorn's sword to the side of him. Bjorn staggers back and grips his weapon tighter. King Raynar's loyal dog. Always ready to do whatever his masters ask of him. He's already got the guns. Lyle feels a deep, hot feeling swelling inside of him. The feeling only grows stronger with each second that passes. He quickly rushes forward, throwing a flurry of blows at the bear, which he barely manages to block. To an outsider, he's a blue and white blur, thrashing at his opponent with precise strikes. Bjorn stumbles and almost falls to his knees before swinging his blade horizontally, forcing Lyle to back off. Through panting breaths, he mocks him again. Yes, you were loyal, but your loyalty ended where the benefits stopped. Our new king won't be as forgiving of the little stunts you've been pulling. Damn! Lyle rushes forward and swings his sword against Bjorn's with a heavy clash. Sparks fly throughout the air as their blades drag across each other with a heavy screeching noise. Okay. Right? You don't know what you're talking about. Trust me, I do. You see, my loyalty ended in a similar way. Each of them positioned their swords at different angles, one opponent trying to get the advantage over the other. When Sir Runar died and you were named his successor, I knew this kingdom was going to shit. So I started pulling stunts of my own, and they called me undisciplined for it. Lyle brings his leg up and kicks into Bjorn's as hard as he can, forcing him back. You're a traitorous little bastard. I'll have that human strung up if it's the last thing I do. And you're going to watch. Hearing this causes Lyle to enter a rage like he's never felt before. Savage and wild, but calm and collected all at the same time. He needs to completely visualize his objective. Killing him isn't the goal here. He has to subdue him somehow. Wrestling him into a tough position is the only way to ensure no blood is spilled on his part. However, it presents a problem. Lyle is a superior duelist by far, but if past training has shown anything, Bjorn should be the better grappler. Switching to this form of fighting gives Bjorn an advantage, but it's the best way to show he was acting in self-defense. He has a chance. He's got a knife! Lyle lets out a low growl before lunging at Bjorn, tackling him to the ground. At this moment, he truly looks like a wild animal as he tosses Bjorn's sword to the side with a single swing of his own. The blade clatters to the ground and Lyle mounts the bear, digging his paws into his wrists with all his strength, pinning him down. He leans in, pressing harder onto Bjorn's wrists, baring his teeth. Like hell you will! All three kingdoms will be in the ground before I let you do that. Bjorn manages to wrench one of his arms out from underneath Lyle's paw, but Lyle already anticipated this. He quickly kicks his feet from the ground and twists around, still holding onto one of Bjorn's arms. The bear reaches around to grab one of Lyle's legs, but it's already too late. Lyle has him locked in a viscous armbar. He locks his legs around Bjorn's arm at the shoulder and pulls the appendage as hard as he can. If you think I'll let you get away with this, you're wrong! Audible grunts can be heard from the large bear, but Lyre doesn't let up. He needs to figure out his next move quickly. But before he can execute anything, Bjorn is already back on the offensive. The bear slowly lifts his legs around to the side of Lyre and positions himself under the wolf's foot. It's a blessing we were both taught by the same man. He taught me everything I need to know to take you down. Before Bjorn can escape the grip, Lyre doubles down and pins the bear's head to the ground harder, while tightening his hold on Bjorn's arm. Yield! In what feels like a split second, Lyle's body is thrown back to the ground as Bjorn twists around and mounts Lyle. Through it all, Lyle's legs are still locked around the bear's body, but they've been forced down to wrapping around Bjorn's waist. Lyle's armor scrapes against the ground and his cape rips as he slid back toward the wall behind him. The bear looks down at him with a sick and amused expression. I don't. Bjorn then lays a heavy punch into Lyle's face. This is then followed by several more blows. Lyre manages to block a few of them, but after a while it becomes harder. Every blow elicits a low growl from the bear. With each punch, the noises around him become more and more muffled. Then they stop. Thick blood feels like it's drowning the insides of his mouth as he sits there panting. Bjorn gets off of him and he's free to catch his breath. His eyes feel swollen and he can't see out of them. He can still hear, but it's slowly fading away. I told you! You're coming with... The last thing his ears pick up is the large bear coughing and wheezing. He's breathing heavily and there's a sound of footsteps rushing to both of them. Last thing he feels is something heavy falling on top of him. This knocks the wind out of him and he slowly loses consciousness. Cold snowflakes land on the tip of his almost numb nose. Last thing he thinks is whether Richter's going to be safe. Ah! Ah! That is the perfect cliffhanger. Perfect cliffhanger. I'm sorry, Billy. Perfect cliffhanger. Oh my god. Ah! Ah, what's that? What happens if I click that? Ah! 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 If Lyre was this good, I can only hope what happened. I can only come to hope what happens in Soul Creek. I can only hope. Oh my god. That was very much worth the wait. Which, at the time of recording, if you're watching this on a VOD, he is, though. If you're watching this, Soul Creek will be coming out on next week. Next week on Tuesday, I believe. Should be. I don't know. Anyways, not much else can be said, so stay safe, have a good night, and I will see you all tomorrow.